Has Zack Snyder saved the DCEU? Has he saved the Justice League movie? Well, in this video I'm going to be sharing with you my opinions of the brand new Justice League Zack Snyder's cut, and coming off probably one of the worst superhero films being the Justice League, it really makes you wonder as to whether or not Zack Snyder could have saved the franchise if he'd had a chance in 2017. And I am happy to say that I think this 4-hour extended cut made by Zack Snyder is pretty darn brilliant. I think it solves so many of the issues of the Justice League in 2017. And it covers and gives so much more depth and development to all of the characters in this film. It is an absolute crying shame that he had to step back from creating the original film in 2017. So what I want to do in this video is I want to talk about the overview of the film and break down each character as to whether or not I think they were given justice, what was improved, what wasn't improved, and of course what was generally improved in the film throughout. So I'm going to be talking about the 4-hour version of this film. There is going to be lots of spoilers in this video, so if you haven't already watched the video, I encourage you to do so. Or if you haven't watched the film and you want to hear someone else's opinion before going in as to whether or not you think it's going to be the right film for you, then this is the video for you. So I want to start by saying I really like Zack Snyder, and actually I am a massive superhero fan, as you can see by looking around the surrounding backgrounds, and I'm definitely more of a Marvel fan. Don't get me wrong, I've been on Marvel Comics growing up. However, one of my favourite films, definitely one of my favourite superhero films, probably my top 3 or 4, is in fact Watchmen, the DC film standalone storyline, which was directed by Zack Snyder. I love the visual novel. It is a really great visual novel. If you haven't read it, it is so good. But also on top of that, the Zack Snyder's film is excellent, and the extended cut I absolutely love. So this is the key thing. I think a lot of people didn't like Watchmen, and I didn't like the extended cut, coming in at around 3.5 hours, almost 4 hours I believe. I actually loved it, and I think if you haven't watched Justice League, the new one with Zack Snyder's edition, if you've watched Watchmen and you like Watchmen, you definitely will like the Justice League, because it's Zack Snyder all over. So firstly, the plot is pretty much solved, essentially. So from Justice League in 2017, there's Steppenwolf, and he wants to get these 3 mother boxes. We don't know anything about Steppenwolf other than he's got this undying thirst for blood, and he just loves killing people. And that is essentially all we get from Steppenwolf. He appears, he beats a few people up, and then Superman rocks up and just obliterates him, and that is pretty much the film over. The film's just the superheroes trying to fumble about until they realise they can revive Superman, and they revive him, and then they win. That is Justice League. Now, the story doesn't ultimately change, but there is 2 hours more of footage in this film, and I think it just gives all of the characters in the film the opportunity to have so much more depth. And I think there's a couple of characters that are really given justice. Even still, there's still a few characters that I think aren't handled that well, and I think that's because, although I'm saying it's definitely a massive improvement from Justice League, I think a lot of the characters do get fleshed out really well, but there is a few issues generally amongst the film, amongst the characters anyway. For example, I think none of the characters, the Justice League, they don't really spend any time together. They have no dialogue in between each other other than just talking about what's going on, what's moving ahead. Pretty much just the dialogue is only there to move the plot along, and it actually makes it at times feel rushed. And that is crazy to say that a 4-hour film feels rushed, but it does at times. And my biggest issue, in fact, is the fact that I don't think this film was long enough. I think this film probably needed another 20 to 30 minutes to really flesh out mainly Aquaman and Batman, and to add a little bit more dialogue between characters so they could build more rapport, because there's barely any in it. There's a little bit between Wonder Woman and Cyborg, but other than that, it's literally just them talking about what's going on in front of them and what they need to do to, defeat Steppenwolf and get their mother boxes or bring Superman back, and that's pretty much it. So let's start with the characters who I think have been given justice. So firstly, Cyborg. So Zack Snyder's actually said recently in an interview that he firmly believes that Justice League is a Cyborg movie, and I think he gets so much more character development in this film, and I really love it. He's a really great character. He's been through some really a very traumatic experience, from being, this top footballer in the US, really brilliant, to dying essentially and coming back as this cyborg. And it's about him and his father, and him coming to terms with what he is and how he is not alone in this world. And I think it's really great, and he plays such an integral part in the Justice League films. I think he's done really well. It's hard because in the Justice League, it is only their second or third outing in their DCEU, and it's kind of like they've tried to throw in so many origins at once. They tried to throw in the origin for Flash, Cyborg and Aquaman essentially. And Cyborg, it lands really well. Flash is going to be getting the movie, so it's not really an origin for him. But Aquaman just doesn't land at all. So that's the next one I want to talk about, who's Aquaman. I feel like he is just a stereotypical drunk guy who is refusing his responsibility, and that's kind of like all he is. And I feel like for Zack Snyder, who's a very great creative director, to give him this very generic role, I feel like it's just lost, and he gets lost throughout the plot. He just refuses to help. He turns up in the nick of time to help them, and then he just sort of is in the background, rocks up, does a bit of fighting, and that's pretty much it. And I feel like when I finished the film, the only character I didn't like was Aquaman. I think because that I personally haven't watched the Aquaman films, so I'm coming in from the perspective of somebody who just has seen Aquaman just in Justice League and then the Zack Snyder cut, and I feel like he wasn't really given any more justice. He wasn't really given much more screen time at all. It's hard not to compare Marvel in DC, and I feel like Aquaman is kind of like the arrogant Thor in this film, because he's a king, he's got all these strength and powers, and he doesn't want his responsibility, blah blah blah. I feel like I get that a little bit from him, and I just don't think it works. I feel like he just wasn't given enough time to really have his character develop and fleshed out, and I think that's obviously the problem, where these new characters are all coming in and they're all trying to force these origins down the viewer's throat when there just isn't enough time to tell it. So next is Wonder Woman, and the reason I want to bring her up next is because she, again, I feel like she masks and shadows Captain America and the Avengers. She's noble, she's older, she's wise, and I think she's a really good character in this film. I think a lot of people have said that there's been a few criticisms of Gal Gadot's acting and stuff. I think she's good for what she does. I think she's a pretty good actress. I think she's in some good scenes. She's quite an integral part of the Justice League, and she's one of the only characters who kind of has this rapport with Batman, Batflick, and Alfred, who kind of, it displays they've already got that rapport, and that's kind of from Batman vs Superman, not necessarily built in this film. And other than that, she's the only person, and she has this little moment with Cyborg, which is nice, but other than that, again, she doesn't really say a great deal, but that's because there's a lot going on in this film. Okay, so next we'll just wrap up with Flash and Batman. So Flash, he has a really great scene added in with a cafe, with it when he saves that woman, and I think it's really, really beautiful. It's got some great music. It feels so much like Zack Snyder. I think it definitely has his spin through and through. I think for me, that was the most clear and coherent sign that Zack Snyder has actually directed this film. It was very, very beautiful. And he gets a little bit more screen time. He's not as annoying. They've cut out a lot of his really corny jokes. Okay, so next we've got Batflick, and I love Ben Affleck. I think he's a great actor, but I feel like, again, he just clearly doesn't want to be in this film, and it really shows throughout. And not only that, Batman actually has a few of his action scenes. Some of the stuff cut out from the original, and then some stuff added in, and he kind of still suffers from that whole thing of he's just kind of like, it's like bringing a fork to a sword fight. Like, I kind of feel like that's where he fits in. Like, he's just so underpowered that he just kind of can't compete with the enemies he's fighting. Like, there's points when, like, some of the minions are like clearly have super strength, and they're like throwing him through walls and stuff, and you kind of think, well, he's already outclassed straight away. So he does kind of suffer from that, and I feel like because of that, he can't do much in the action scenes. He kind of starts off the Justice League, and he's sort of like the focal point of them to try and keep them together and moving forward. But I don't really see him doing much other than just saying, oh, I believe, and I want to keep trying hard, and we'll just keep going and we'll win. And it kind of feels just generic. I don't really think it's the best Batman we've ever seen, and which is a bit of a shame. But I feel like, again, he is a bit outclassed. But he doesn't have that many lines and stuff as well. I just didn't really think the Batman was very good in this. So finally, we've got Superman. So Superman I feel like he has less lines in this one, even though he's in the film longer. He doesn't have a great big part in the Justice League. He kind of rocks up, has a little hug with his family, then goes and saves the day. That doesn't really change. However, they do hint a lot in this one about a future where Superman maybe turns to the dark side, turns evil, and starts killing people, which is displayed in the nightmare dreams, which I think is really, really cool. So we got these flashbacks in Batman vs Superman, and then they've come again here, and it'll kind of a little bit more confusing, but now this has all been explained more so. I'm kind of getting the impression that either there's a multiverse, or this is actually the future, and maybe Batman somehow was seeing visions of the future. And I think it's actually really cool, because realistically, DC has this one thing that Avengers doesn't have, which Marvel doesn't have, which is they have this one character who is so overpowered, and he can pretty much beat any single character, hero, villain, and they have the opportunity to turn him, to make him the villain, and I think that would actually be a phenomenal film in itself. and it would actually be the true Batman versus Superman, or the true Superman versus the Justice League. And they're kind of implying this in this film, which is something that was completely disregarded in the Justice League, which has been added in, which I think is brilliant. The potential of Superman in this film for going forward in the future films is really insane. However, the downside of that is there pretty much isn't going to be any more films. So it's kind of teasing you with, you know what, if Zack Snyder was given the helm, he could really create this amazing universe, but that is never going to happen. And that's kind of like the double-edged sword with Superman in this film. Okay, so now we've got the villains. So Steppenwolf, I've already briefly mentioned, he is now being given a lot more depth. He is now not just this lone maniac who's just loves destroying planets. No, he in fact is a disciple of Darkseid, and he wants to apologize and return to his home world, and he needs to do it by capturing like 50,000 worlds, and if he does that, he can then earn his place back home. So he's taken over Earth. And there's also the fact that not only is it the mother boxes, there's this special formula which can basically grant the user the power of, I think it's eternal life, and he's found out that Darkseid somehow forgets, which is a little bit crazy, but basically there's an invasion, which is awesome. So they add in this invasion with Darkseid, which is absolutely phenomenal. It is probably the best fight scene in the film, and I think that wasn't in Justice League. We see the Green Lantern, we see Zeus, we see a lot of other heroes, lots of Amazon, and it's really cool. It's a really, really bloody long, probably 15-minute scene, well, maybe 10, but it's really good. And Darkseid forgets that for some reason. It is a bit, when I say it now, it feels a bit comical. He forgets that there's this formula on Earth, probably because he gets gravely injured, and then Steppenwolf reminds him that this is the planet, and he needs to get the mother boxes to turn the world, transform the world, terraform it, but then finally get the formula. So he's really interested, and he knows that he can win back Darkseid by taking over Earth. He then fails, clearly, and it is quite a more gruesome death, which I think is pretty darn awesome. And Darkseid, that image is Darkseid, so he's not in this a lot. He's kind of like Thanos, let's be real. He's kind of like what Thanos was in like Avengers 1 and Guardians of the Galaxy. He is a lot more menacing, I have to say, than Thanos. He's a lot more like terrifying to look at. He looks a lot more menacing. And I think this film sets up an absolutely amazing sequel, which is we're probably never going to get in Darkseid. And I think it's really awesome that we get to see him. And the only issue is, again, is what I've already said, is the fact that it kind of doesn't make sense that he forgot that there was a secret weapon on Earth, and he's just remembered because he has to be reminded. But that is probably a small minor plot hole of the actual plot. Okay, so what are my actual final overview thoughts of this film? Well, as I've said, I really enjoyed the film. It's 4 hours long. It feels, like I've said, it doesn't feel long. I think people have commented on it that it felt like a drag. I genuinely don't believe that at all. I think it was really well paced. I think, in fact, as I've already said, I really felt like Aquaman and Batman needed a little bit more screen time to really flesh out their characters. But all in all, a really great film. Probably 9 out of 10, I would have said. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a really good story. And I feel like this film could have been split in half. It could have been 2 films. It could have been 2.5 hour films. But obviously, because it was only the second or third film that was in the DCEU, they kind of warned us there was no way they were going to allow it to be a part 1 and a part 2. But it definitely could have been. And again, that's the problem. This had so much potential. And this film did deliver. And I think it's crazy to think that if this film came out in 2017, Justice League might not have been. The DCEU would be completely different. It would have so much more films, such different films. We wouldn't be getting reboots of Suicide Squad. We wouldn't be getting rebranding. We wouldn't be getting a new Batman film. We would literally be getting like this contained universe, which is what Avengers have, which the MCU has done so well with, and it's a shame that they just flopped it by rushing it. And this is just an example of what it could have been. So would I recommend this film? Absolutely. If you've seen Justice League, just forget that. Just delete that from your memory and just watch this anew. If you haven't watched it and you haven't watched any of them, I would recommend you just watch this one. Forget about the Justice League from 2017. It is a pile of garbage. It's worth noting as well. Now you could say this film's 2 hours longer, so it's 2 hours of the original film and 2 hours of a new film. No, I would say they've easily cut out half an hour to 40 minutes of stuff from the first film. All the jokes are gone. The introduction with Batman's gone. It's honestly reworked massively to the point where it's barely the same film. This is my thoughts on Justice League Zack Snyder edition. Definitely worth a watch. If you like pop culture, you like superheroes, it's worth a watch. If you like Zack Snyder, it's worth a watch. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.